Hey, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Covestic's Cloud Visibility and Cost Reduction webinar. I'm John Sniowski, and I will be your moderator today for the webinar. But before getting started, just a couple of housekeeping points. Please do submit any questions that you may have via the chat window. We will try to answer as many as time permits at the end of the session. But if there are any we can't get to, we'll certainly respond by email. Also, we are recording this webinar and we'll post a copy along with the slides to our website. Typically, this will happen within 24 hours. We'll also email you a link to the download location. So just a quick introduction to Covestic for those who don't know us. Covestic is a milestone company, and we are an elite ServiceNow partner. We've been a partner since 2012, and we take a collaborative consulting approach in multiple ServiceNow product areas such as ITX, customer service management, security operations, plus platform and custom apps. Our expertise is organized into 4 practice areas that include consulting, staffing, managed services, and licensing. We have an average CSAT score of 4.75 out of 5 with over 300 ServiceNow projects deployed and 90% client retention rate. So hopefully a few of these logos are familiar with you. They become our valued long-term clients. If you see similarities in your organization in one or more of these names, and if you are from one of these, we really thank you for your loyalty and choosing us to guide you as your trusted partner. And some introductions. So I'm John Sniowski, and I am the Covestic ServiceNow practice lead for the ITX domain areas. But with me today are 3 members of my team participating in the panel discussion. We have Lynn Reynolds, our senior consultant for ITSM, Scott Trumbull, our senior solution architect, and John Message, our senior technical consultant. And now the heart of our call today, what you see on the screen are typical cloud challenges. Customers feel they have a lack of visibility into multiple cloud platforms and want to better master this space to be more efficient and cost effective, ultimately to maximize the value of their cloud environments. The rest of our webinar will address these concerns and provide you with solutions on the ServiceNow platform. So let's now get started. Over to the team.
Thanks, John. Lynn Reynolds here. So in talking to our customers, we found that many of them have virtualized their hosting environments to take advantage of combined compute and automated failover. Many started out with vCenter and virtualized their on-prem environments, and then recently, many of them have moved much of their hosting and storage to the cloud to optimize consumption and take advantage of cloud-based software and SaaS applications. Our customers use many cloud solutions such as Azure and AWS, and may also allow specific business units to use other solutions such as IBM and Google Cloud. What challenge this creates is that they can no longer see all their cloud usage and spend in one place.
Yeah, Lynn, I hear you. When I'm dealing with some of our customers and kind of their architecture groups, a lot of people are complaining about the same thing, and they have the same kind of struggles between all their companies, and they really don't feel like they have control over each of these environments. So they're using all these different environments. They don't really have control, and their leadership doesn't necessarily know what's being deployed out in all of these environments or have any single pane of glass into seeing what they have out there. I don't know, what are some of the folks you work with? What are the leadership doing to accomplish this today?
So what we've heard from some of our customers is many receive separate reports from the different systems and have access to separate dashboards for each of their cloud environments, but there's not really a consolidated view.
The environment appears to be sprawling. Customers feel they don't have any control over their assets, and they can't see where everything is at. They also don't have a good way to allocate costs back to the consuming groups. Currently, the bills go directly to IT. Why aren't companies just standardizing on one cloud platform?
John, that's a great question. Different groups are right-sizing solutions to meet their individual business needs and oftentimes prefer different cloud solutions. There are strong business cases of why they are doing it this way. You want to make it easy for a group to spin up a particular cloud, and you don't want to dictate which cloud solution each group needs to use. but organizations do want to be able to see everything going on in their IT environment in one consolidated view.
Admin typically don't have time to learn how to leverage the dashboards in each one of these cloud spaces or to pull the data together. This should be automated somehow. You can export the data into spreadsheets, but it's not real time, and admins don't have time to do this all the time.
Yeah, John, and that's the challenge. And that's the challenge we really see depicted here in this graphic. We have all these different tools out there. All of the tools pull stuff into their own environments. They all have their own management consoles, which you mentioned. And if I'm the CMDB admin, just like you mentioned, I don't have time to learn how to go to each of these consoles and figure out what's going on there. And also, it's constantly changing, right? That's the whole nature of the cloud, and the goal of this is stuff spinning up, stuff's coming down, it's happening every day, all the time. But on the other side, when you look at the bigger picture, the architecture groups and dealing with it, when I have all these different repositories of my data, I don't have that clear view of the database, and it's difficult to use those items. If I'm trying to develop this service-oriented architecture and I'm trying to develop my application service and keep track of all the CIs, I might have some of that application service leverage CIs in AWS and some of that application service leverage CIs in Azure. And if I don't have a means to pull them into one place and show the relationships together, I lose that functionality, and that just stretches out my mean time to resolution. So I get an incident and figuring out all the pieces, parts that go into making that application service. I can have these different repositories, and I could get away with maybe some spreadsheets if I'm a small, flat organization. But any organization of any size and that's doing real time and real work, there's just no way for them to keep track in a spreadsheets. They're dynamic cloud environments.
Yeah, Scott, this is really a common problem across a lot of organizations today. So I would like to do a quick poll. So for those on the call today, what cloud environments are you currently using? And please do pick all that apply. And we'll give that a few minutes. Oh, I see that. Yeah, interesting. It looks like we've completed our polling, and I'm going to share that with the team here. So as we can see, wow, Azure 75%, 88% with AWS, but as we can see, there is quite a mix across the entire environment, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least 75% of the people out here have both Azure and AWS in their environment, which happens to work out well because those are the two we're going to look at demoing here today and taking a look at what ServiceNow can do in those environments. So based on that, if everybody's on board, let's go ahead and let's take a look at what some of these things look like in ServiceNow. Okay. So right now, I'm taking a look. If everybody can see my screen, everybody can see, I'm taking a look at the cloud provisioning and governance dashboard in ServiceNow. And this comes along, if I have my cloud provisioning and governance set up and I'm doing discovery against my cloud, and also I'm gonna say it here in my virtualized environment where my VMware stuff, as Lynn mentioned earlier, might still be hosted in-house on ESX servers, but we kind of lump that together in our virtualized thing. So I can see on aggregate here, these resources, my cloud resources pulled together. I could see what's going on in there over time by the resource types, right? So I could see in here, getting a spike on some of my public cloud resources, the types of things that are out there, and I can drive into my environments. And all of these are active widgets here on this page because these are things that are coming in from ServiceNow, things coming in by ServiceNow doing discovery on those sources. So I look at my AWS environments. I have the opportunities to go in and kind of filter maybe by the service account so I can see what individual groups might be doing. and the number of things they're using. These are active widgets. I can drive in and see the actual details. Again, these are by the individual items where I'm taking a look at those. But at the higher level, I'm seeing all my items rolled up together on my main page and where my trendings and how we're going in that. See similar things for Azure, or similar things for VMware, and what my instances and type of things look like out there. Again, these are all active. I can look at my particular data centers or those, and again with Azure, I have them all rolled up together. I have the individual environments. And one of the things I think is pretty cool here, under each of these has a widget on it, particularly on my virtual machines. This widget down here in the corner, which I have the ability, I could drive into this, but I can see exactly what's going on in that environment, which things are on, which things are off, and what's going on there.
So this is Lynn. John, I have a question for you. I see a number of our devices are in an off or paused state. Do customers get charged for devices in off or paused?
No, actually, that's a good thing. The team should be turning the machines off when they're not using them. They don't get charged when the machines are paused or off. And also, as Scott showed earlier, you see that service count area, we could actually even then drill down into a team to see if they're turning the machines off to get the maximum savings.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and you know, now we're talking about cost, and that's really the piece that everybody's wanting to talk about, everybody to look. So when we move out of here, and one thing I want to bring up before we move out of here is this is pretty real time, right? So if I'm setting up my notification services, I'm setting up with my AWS and Azure, as things are retiring or things are getting created, I'm going to see them reflected on here within a few minutes at time. But we talked about that cost, and we talked about what we really want to see here, and what really the drivers of a lot of this conversation are. And so what I've done here is I've rolled over, and this is part of the Cloud Insights, and I'm looking at the Cloud Insights dashboard, where now I'm taking and pulling in, not just if I'm pulling in the data about what's there out there in these individual environments, I could take a look and find out a little bit about what it's costing me. You know, so this overview tab that we're looking at, and everybody's jaw is probably dropping right now. And this really kind of showcases these overall trends. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and it showcases these overall trends in these environments. So this is what's going on currently at the time. And there was a few week period in there where, wow, we really had to drive up in our cost, and where those trendings are, where things were, it's a very slight increase. On the other ones, you can see there's a slight increase, but on these times. So we have the ability, we could drill into this and drive into that and see where those costs are coming from, what groups those are in, what specific things are driving those trending. You know, maybe we were in the middle of a UAT testing or performance testing and spinning up instances for that 2-week period to drive that. So that's where we're looking at our overall cost. We can also take a look at our monthly cost, time over time. So this is how we're going currently in the month, and where we're driving at. So our current month spend is at 64,000, because we're not all the way through this month yet. We're getting this on a regular basis. Our monthly spends are average about 90. Right, because we're here in July, where we've been, our month-to-month spend. We're going to get similar kind of things. If I wanted to look at, say, just a particular provider, where we're going in there, I can drive it in. But you know, one of the big things is seeing these costs aggregated together, and then jumping over to our last tab, the one that's going to make everybody go, oh, this is information we need to talk about and be aware of when I go over into this forecast tab. Right. So now that I'm over into the forecast, I can see, well, we're at 80 grand so far this month. We saw last month jumped up to 90, but we had that high peak trend area. We could see, based on our projections, our next month forecast, we're going to be at 90 or at 84 by September, 92, and well over 100,000 by the end of the year. And that's a big deal, right? These are real numbers. These are real things. So right now, you know, if we're starting to pull these things into place, our leadership has the information where we can try and start to do some costing and do some justification and know where we're going. And I don't want to be the one going to my leadership and saying I'm going to need another $4,000 every month in the cloud cost. So where's that going? We can drive a little bit into that. I'm going to take a look. I'm moving now over into spend optimization. Again, this is another one of the dashboards that comes with ServiceNow. When I have the Cloud Insights, I'm in the ServiceNow Cloud Insights. And one of the things I really want to highlight here, and I really want to talk about, so now we can see where that spend is going, where that spend is going by groups, by individual owners. But I can also see driving on here, I have $15,000 of my cloud cost each month that I don't know. At this point in time, I don't know what I'm paying for that. I don't know what systems it supports, what groups are using it, or what they're doing. I don't know if this is valuable. I don't know if this is waste. So taking a look at, when we get into the next phase, kind of taking a look at these unassigned resources are what we want. One of the things we want to take a look at next.
Scott, this is fantastic. I love that you can see all the details about each of the environments. Going back to your comment about forecast, kind of referencing the forecast numbers again, can you tell what specifically is driving your monthly increase that we saw a moment ago, and how can companies influence those costs?
Yeah, well, and generally because our organizations are growing and we might have things, hopefully, whatever our product's doing, we're having to do things. We might be by plan driving our cloud costs forward. But the biggest concern of that is waste. When we look at this forecast, how much of this is waste? How much of this is real, accurate? This is providing value to my customers, providing value to my internal and external customers. So I don't know. And you've worked with a lot of people too, Lynn. I mean, and with a lot and John out there. What do you guys think? What percentage of cloud costs, of a company's cloud costs or our cloud costs, do you think are going to waste?
You know, we've had difficulty getting those figures kind of at hand, but estimates that I've heard are about 20% are attributable to waste.
So
Yep,
that's,
I'd have to agree.
yeah, so that's a lot of money.
So let's go back to our audience here and thinking about your own cloud environment. How much do you think is being wasted today? And we'll give that a minute. Okay, I will close the poll and share the data with everyone. Wow. 43% voted on 20 to 30%. So Scott, that's even higher potentially than our original discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, so coming in, 20 to 30%, and most organizations do kind of picture their waste and assume their waste is at 20 to 30%.
I'm going to hide that poll and we'll talk about industry standards now. So IDC estimates that 20 to 30% of cloud spend is wasted today, but when we ask customers at 20%, there could be additional 10% on top of that. So 30 is pretty fair in terms of what's not on the client radar today. And Gartner's view is equally pessimistic. If you look at their planning assumption, organizations that don't have any form of cloud optimization process in play will overspend about 40%. So
wow. So I want to talk just a little bit about that piece right here, because this is really important to what we're talking about here today, John. So if I understand this right, from the Gartner survey, they kind of agree with that organizations think they're wasting about 20. When they do a survey of it, they find they're wasting about 30. But I think what the Gartner study is saying is that if people aren't actively putting in a program, if they aren't actively putting in the features, the tooling, the stuff in place, the processes in places to control that cloud waste, that it's going to push their overspend up over 40%. Nearly half of their monthly cloud spend is going to just become waste if they don't have a process and a mechanism for controlling it. That's egregious.
very significant. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna turn it back to Lynn, who's gonna do a deeper dive into this cost breakdown.
Yeah, so industry experts have taken a look at the category of waste and really organized it into 5 specific areas, the ones that you see on screen. So kind of moving from left to right, they they break out waste into legacy instances. This has to do with cloud solutions that are based on legacy technology, perhaps less than optimal cost effect, not optimized cost solutions, as well as maybe not taking advantage of the best pricing and costing options. So that's what legacy instances are. Also unidentified and unused assets. So these could be cloud solutions that are running in the environment, but we don't know who owns them. So it's difficult to go back to that owner to, fine tune or identify whether or not that asset is needed. So these could be things that are running in the environment that don't need to be there. We also have this notion of reserved compute. So that's where we have systems that are on, but they may not need to be in use, that we maybe don't need them in the environment. They could be turned off. And we also have business hours. These could be non-production, sub-production environments such as dev or test that don't need to be running 24 hours a day. So in fine-tuning those business hours, you could actually you could optimize your cloud consumption and reduce some costs just by the business hours that are set on a particular solution. And then lastly, we have right sizing. And this really refers to cloud solutions that are over-provisioned or oversized to meet the need. In other words, you've put in place a server or cloud solution that has excess capacity that you're not taking advantage of, but you're paying for. So really, waste kind of breaks out into those 5 areas.
Wow. So that brings us into a little bit what we really want to talk about here today. So if you don't mind, Lynn, I'm going to go back into taking a look at our ServiceNow environment and taking a look at Cloud Insights, the Cloud Insights dashboard in ServiceNow. So hopefully you can see that again and everything, and it's up, and you can see my instance up on the screen.
Yep, we can see it, Scott.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at the Cloud Insights dashboard at the very beginnings, we have that ability. So we looked at those surveys and we looked at some of those things of how those costs are being categorized into different areas. And my Cloud Insight dashboard helps me pull those things together and show the values. And more importantly, we're going to talk about be able to take some action on it, right? So this is not just something where we can talk about it, where we can see it, we can actually do something to resolve these issues. So we had already taken a look at the cloud spend and driven into that area and showed how it's broken up, where it's coming from. We see we have the high level costs on the right sizing, the business hours, but the very first thing I want to drive into and I want to talk about is those unassigned resources, right? So just looking in this environment right now, I have 164 of my cloud resources out there that I don't know who they belong to. I don't know what they were spun up to do. I don't know what they're connected to and why they're out there. So that's 20% of my total cost. So from our dashboard, I'm going to drill into there and try and find out some details about this and use the system to take some actions on them. Right? So I could see out of my total resources, my 20%, I have some, and we'll talk about policies, some that are already assigned and being reviewed and put in place, but I'm going to drill into here. And just these are active dashboards, just like the other ones we looked at before. I could look at them by group, by individual things, but I want to take a look at our things overall. And I'm going to go into all these 164, these 24%, or these 20%, and take a look at exactly what I have here. So by drilling into here, now I'm taking a look at what are all my unassigned resources. I can see my list of them on here. I can see what I want to do about it. So if I can see some of them where I'm going to take a look, and we're going to talk a little bit about these policies, where from some of these I've taken some actions to try and initiate, and we can build out our policies in ServiceNow to assign ownership to these groups. So in this case, I've defined this particular Windows server based on coming from AWS, based on my policy of UAT, master UAT, I've gone ahead and automatically, because I've scheduled it in a job, I've scheduled it in and I've created it out here. I've selected some of these, I've driven them out, and I've created a change where I can go in and actually institute and update these records in ServiceNow. And we want to
Scott, I think we may have lost your audio.
Yeah, Scott, we've lost your audio.
Scott, are you there?
Everyone, we're working through a technical issue and we'll pause for just a second while we get this taken care of.
Hey team, can you hear me out there?
Welcome back.
All right, so I lost my audio. I don't know what the last thing you guys heard from me was.
So you were just about to demonstrate actioning a change from an unassigned resource based on a policy.
Well, I'm going to jump back into the policies here, and I apologize for everybody. I have no idea. I was talking away here, and why my microphone and went away and then came back with no actions for me. So, all right. So we've gone into this policy, and you've probably seen me. Have you seen my screen? Have I been flipping through them, and you've been seeing stuff coming up and going?
Yeah,
Yeah, I started to do to narrate over your mouse movements, but
Oh, that's fantastic. It's awesome. Well, I'm going to go through it really quick again here, and we'll have a chance to look at policies later on. So again, I have taken, I've opened up this policies. We can create our policies based on our service accounts, right? So we can create our service account, or we pick our service accounts that created this data being pulled from our hosting environment. We then pull in our tag data and our environment tag. And in this case, whenever our environment tag is dev,
Scott, can you explain the importance of using tags?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So each of our hosting environments right? Each one of those, each of our cloud providers, whether it's Google Cloud Platform, AWS, Azure, they have the ability to assign meta tags to our resources when they deployed. And most of the tools that people use to develop on there have the ability to script and create these things when they're deployed out there. So it's really just a key value pair that are deployed on everything out there. And one of the things I've been working with a lot of organizations, or a couple organizations recently, at a higher level cloud architecture is to define a set of standards for uh, for the group and for the organization. Well, so whenever anything's get deployed, a certain set of names, a certain set of tags all get deployed for it. And there are, not only can we use them in here, because ServiceNow Discovery has the ability to pull these in, we have the ability to, because ServiceNow has the ability to pull in the discovery, to pull these in the share, we have the ability to use these here. We can use them in service mapping. We can build our maps, our service maps based on tags on things and in other areas. So on that note, is everybody still with me?
Yep, we're still here, Scott.
All right, yeah, give me something every now and then. If I don't hear it, I'll get worried. I'm going to go back over to our Cloud Insights dashboard. So we talked right ad infinitum about the importance. First, we need to make sure we get things assigned to people, and then we can drive in and start doing something about these other actions, these other areas, these right sizing and stuff. So again, at the high level, I'm going to drive in. I could see the right sizing. I could see $25,000 a month are going to right side, or wasted costs on things being over provisioned, being larger than they need to be. 28% of my spend. So we were at the rate we were looking at growing up, Lynn. If I could go back to my boss and say, hey, I can drive down $25,000, I don't have to worry about my cost going up before the end of the year.
Yeah, that definitely offsets that $4,000 increase we were seeing for sure.
Yeah. So I take a look and I drive into this. So at the very top level, when I go into this, I can see my top 5 recommendations, my top 5 areas for savings. And this is one of the things, and we don't necessarily want to fault these people that are doing it. We want to get involved and give them information up they understand, because this machine doing the logistics, is who's owning it here, and these people that are doing it, they might not be individually overly concerned about it being a $420 a month cost, right? And when they provisioned, then when they were picking the size to make this and kind of guessing what it was going to need, putting that in, probably weren't concerned. But on aggregate, these things really start to add up. So, and that's where when I take a look and I see all of these items out here and all of these things starting to add up and see what the cost is, what it's going, and that's where I can go in now and start to do some triage and to work on lowering these costs and work on the team. So I could see my items out here by area. I could see what my potential monthly savings is by right sizing these machines, by driving them down to the right area of the cost and the right size machine. I can select them. Right. In this case, I have the opportunity to schedule a job, and what that's going to do is create the changes. Right. We're going to create changes. We're not going to drive these items. We're not just going to do stuff. We're not just going to make changes. We know who the owners are. We're going to drive this through our ITSM processes of our changes. So we kind of have some recommendations out there that are scheduled and are in place. We've created,
Scott,
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
that's the recommended size out there. How is that system determining? How is ServiceNow determining that recommended size?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So, what it's looking at, and we look at, as soon as we connect, we start pulling in usage. So we're not just pulling in what's out there. We're able to pull in usage from these items. And I'm really, ServiceNow is looking at the system and it's making a determination. So it wants, if we want the top 20% of the usage to never exceed 80% of the availability based on history. So if it were an example of, let's say I had a class of machine, a family of machine that had a 4 gigabyte, an 8 gigabyte, and a 16 gigabyte sizing. and we were currently sized at 16 gigabytes. Well, let's say my last 10 days worth of usage, my peak usage used 3.9. Right. So it's not going to recommend a 4 gigabyte machine because that would put it over 80%. It's going to recommend to go to an 8 gigabyte machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, and that's kind of an industry standard where you want your machines to, their peak to consume 80% of their
Yeah.
value. Yep.
Cool.
So we've looked at that, and we've looked at the size and the cost and our confidence score also to
Hey,
make
Scott,
it.
on the confidence, how is that determined? How is it determining those mediums and lows values?
Yeah, so two different things go into play on that. One is the amount of data. So if we want something to be high, for something to be a high confidence, we have to have at least 10 days worth of historical data on usage, and we have to be within the same family and generation. So in this case, down here where I'm a low, you can see I'm going from a T2 to a T3. So we're jumping that whole family and class. So our confidence is going to go down lower versus in a medium. If either one of those things have fallen out, if we don't have a good 10 days or we're not the same family generations, we might fall to a medium.
Okay.
Yeah. So that goes into it. So we have a couple that are already scheduled because we created the job out there to schedule. And what it's doing, it's going out there. And again, we're not doing these things to people. We're engaging our team, but we're giving them the information they need. So by doing this, I'm creating a change request. It's going to follow your organization's change policies, change guidelines, whether we do a standard or a normal change. And these groups that do it, they're going to be able to be involved in approving them or rejecting them. And if they approve it, cool. Because we're using the cloud insight and governance, or the cloud governance and provisioning, we can automatically go out and institute these changes. We don't have to put it on a task for somebody to do. So as soon as we get through the approval process, we can start realizing these savings, and we would see it showing up in our trend back. Remember that trend we looked at back at the beginning right away. Now, right? So yeah. There might be reasons why somebody says they could decline it, right? They might have sized it that way for a reason. They know what their job's doing. They know what's coming on. They might come back and say, we're telling them the rationale and what's going on there. They might decline our change, reject the change. That's fine, perfectly fine. That's how we want to engage them. So we have the opportunity then. We could go ahead and take and add that machine to our excluded list, so it falls off. So it doesn't keep showing up on our dashboard. It doesn't keep showing up on our numbers of potential savings if there's a reason we don't want to look at those. So we took a look at the right sizing and how we can drive back real cost, how we can go to our leadership and show how we can drive down cost instead of going every month, on how we're gonna be adding cost, how we're adding more and more cost to it. So we'll take a quick look at unused machines. Now, the process, again, we see our top 5, we see what the cost savings on those machines might be if we get rid of them or we spin them down. We see the rationale that we're going to use for a change, how we add them to a change, and those things, and running through our change process is exactly the same, but these are just machines we're looking to turn off based on a billing. Yeah.
So Scott, what is the difference between right sizing and unused machines?
Yeah, so, and that's a really good question. And at a very high level, if 20% of the CPU usage, if the average top 20% of the CPU usage, those peaks are less than 1% of the available resources, it's going to recommend it as an unused machine, right? Okay. So again, just because it's a recommendation, we might institute the change process. They might take a look at it and say, oh no, we do need this machine, and somebody could come back and say, well, let's just scale it down to a smaller machine. But we're looking at it, and the magic is 1%. That's the difference between whether it's recommended as a right size or an unused. But we see that a lot. Organizations see that a ton, particularly like their dev environments are doing things, or people are doing POCs. They spin up the virtual environment. That's what we want them to do. That's what it's there for.
Yep.
But things aren't used anymore. They've fallen off, and we forget that piece of going in and turning that machine off.
Yep, cleaning up our waste.
Yeah. One of the other areas where we have the opportunity to drive in, we don't have a lot of data here in our environment because we have good schedules set up, is those business hours. Yeah, if you remember, Lynn brought that up earlier. Part of the thing is being able to turn stuff on and off, being able to automatically, using our schedules in our environments in our AWS or Azure. So what we have out here, we currently have some good schedules, so we don't have anything to show on here, but what I do want to show is we have the ability to define policies in here, just like we defined policies so the engine could drive who to assign these things to. We could define policies for the system to make recommendations for schedules for us to apply. Again, similar process, whether we wanted to just report on it. In this case, this one is a report. So we wanted to just tell us about it, that this machine should be in an 8 to 10, not automatically kick off that change process. Or I can take a look at, here's my rewards processing dev, which it is auto scheduled. So the key about this is same way, I can use my tags that I put on it. I can use the idea of the accounts that own it. But the cool thing is when I make these changes, I will go ahead based on our predefined schedules. And when we approve these changes and move them through, I'll institute these flows. So they will automatically be turned on and turned off. We'll assign those flows to turn those machines on and off on those hours.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But realistically, we're doing all right on time, I think here. I want to take a quick minute, and I know we've been talking about our virtual resources a lot on here, and we've been talking about keeping control of our spend on our virtual resources. So how do we explain this to our leadership? How do we provide value? How can we lower it? How can we get these costs down? And then through our cloud insights, pulling that data in. But there's the other piece of all of our cloud spend. And this isn't a big deep dive today, but I want to make sure we all know it's aware. And I think it's a good topic, and we might all have to get together and talk about this again, Lynn. Right? So we have a couple of things going on in our environment when we're talking about cloud. We have those resources that are out there, and we have our SaaS licensing. Right? So now, by attaching this, by pulling in the data from, say, our identity provider, from Okta, those type of things, we can find out who's actually using their SaaS licenses, right? We're paying for all these licenses for ServiceNow, for Salesforce, for Tableau Online, whatever it might be. We're paying these licenses out there, and we can see who's actually using them by pulling in that usage data. And again, the system make recommendations. So we can drive those costs and look at SaaS licenses. And I really want to schedule an hour to get back with you guys and talk about this a little bit.
So Scott, we've spent a fair amount of time talking about how customers can kind of tailor their cloud environment to reduce costs and optimize costs. I'm assuming there's a kind of a companion idea of positively or negatively influencing application and software costs as we make these cloud changes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we talked right here about SaaS, and this is people using their licensing and driving and maybe finding some recommendations on how we can drive it down. But the other piece is taking a look at, right? So if I'm sizing a machine up and down, let's say I'm using that machine as an SAP server, or that machine's a PeopleSoft server, or everybody's favorite licensing to talk about is Oracle. So now if I'm using software asset management, I got the SAM Pro, and I'm pulling all that data and I'm combining with my cloud, I can see what's deployed on that machine. And again, this is a whole topic, and we could talk about a whole SAM thing and pulling this together. And in this case, What I know is this is a change I have made to turn down 2 processors on this machine. So it was a 4 processor machine.
So
I'm
that's one
turning
of the
it
right
down to
sizing choices that you made.
right. And so because when I did that and I selected how I was going to change the machine, this machine, I know it has Oracle installed on it and a SQL Server installed on it, which SQL Server licensed by Core. So if we drilled into that, we wouldn't see a change on SQL Server, but Oracle licensed by uh, Oracle licensed by processor. So I can see by rolling down that change, not only am I going to have my virtualized cost change, I could have a licensing spend come down of $35,000 a year. So that's a significant number. On the other side of this, and I like this one because everybody wants to show down, but we could also be seeing this go up, right? So if my change board has gotten a change to replace and show a machine going up in size, they have the ability to look at the projections and know, well, this is going to cost me more in my licensing. And where there's probably a good reason for it, it just lets people start accounting and doing the bookkeeping and the processing for it.
So you can see your whole investment cost related to a particular asset.
Yes, absolutely. So I know we've kind of been driving and kind of gotten a little off track and talked about in talking about the licensing and the cost on this and talking about, again, driving that cloud spend dashboard and that SAM, the cloud insights, and combining them with software asset management and how our next steps to drive down our cost. But getting back to what we were here to talk about today, John.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Great job. Thank you. So we started today talking about 2 key challenges, a cloud-first strategy and how cloud is making IT more complex. So first, services no longer run in a single data center environment, and they're spread out across multiple clouds and on-premise infrastructure, so hybrid. And we discussed the solution. By delivering cloud insights and ServiceNow, you can improve your visibility with the cloud resource dashboard, optimize your cloud environment with cloud insights, and right-size your environment with some key recommendations. And secondly, there's the problem of out-of-control cloud cost. And here we talked about how to manage your cloud costs with ServiceNow Cloud Spend Dashboard and also address your software license costs. So this concludes our presentation today, but please do stay tuned for our upcoming webinars where we'll dig much deeper into the software usage data and start managing software spend and visibility and license change projectioning. So we have a few minutes left here. I think we're at 2:46, and I have a few questions in the chat, Scott. So first question, how long does the Cloud Insights or ServiceNow application really have to actually run to provide reliable recommendations?
Really, we can really start seeing some value as soon as we get that data and those connections made to our environment. Now, it's a little bit different whether we're talking about AWS or Azure. But really, as soon as we get connected, particularly with AWS, when I connect with AWS, it's gonna pull in. We're able to pull in that CPU and memory usage data for for 14 days preceding. So we're not having to collect that over time. We're going to the APIs of the product to pull in this information.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Scott. Second question I see, do I have to manually enter the cloud invoices or contract or input data to provide cost data, or is there a way to import or ingest this data?
Yeah, and really that goes right along with the last question. When we make these connections, Discovery and then Cloud Insight is pulling that data from the sources. So it's going to pull it from Azure. Really, whenever it does updated billing, every time the billing data is updated, it's going to be pulled from Azure. For AWS, it's pulling from the sources, those percentage of discount rates, the discount tables. It's comparing those to the actual cost and things. So you're getting all that data from the provider. You're not having to go in and print your invoices or even extract them and load them in CSVs or anything like that.
Oh, that's great. That's really cool. Thanks, Scott. And next question, if I'm already a AWS cloud subscriber, why can't I just get this info from AWS Cost Explorer? Why do I really need ServiceNow?
That's a good question. You could get the information from the thing, but it kind of goes back to the area where I was talking about earlier in the thing, where you can't see all of your things in one consolidated view. So if you bring on Azure, now you have two different places you have to look at, and the data's in two different places. And also you don't get the chance to kind of see all that, the right sizing, the business hours, unused machines, and then take those items like Scott was showing, using those policies and all items to actually action on them within the system.
Right, and the other piece I want to add to that is driving it back to the owners, right? I could see that machine out there. Maybe I'm looking at the cloud platform, but to see it in my CMDB and know who the owner of that is and those groups, to be able to engage them through our change process and in getting them adjusted.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, well, that concludes our list of questions, unless there's anything else from panel or anyone else in the chat window today.
Yes, Scott, can you share our contact info?
Oh, I sure can. Let me just click on here one more time.
Yeah, so for all of the attendees and participants today, if you have any additional questions, something occurs to you later, just reach out to us at servicenow@covestic.com, where we'd be happy to talk to you about how to utilize cloud solutions within ServiceNow to meet your business needs. Or if you think of something later you'd like to ask us, please feel free to reach out.
All right, well, thanks everyone for attending today. Have a great day.